Welcome back to the Dane Calloway channel. In this video, we will cover the horrific event of Hurricane Helene, which devastated parts of Florida, Georgia, Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, South Carolina, and North Carolina. In most recent reports, people are still trapped and are trying to receive help through food, shelter, and rescue. Reports have emerged claiming that certain rescue crew members trying to save more people are being blatantly turned away and threatened with jail time if they refuse to comply. It's important to note that the majority of the rescue aircraft providing assistance are privately owned and do not work for the government. Before we go any further, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the Dane Calloway channel if you haven't already. Also, turn on your post notifications to stay up to date on all of our informative videos. Now, let's get into the video. One of the government's primary resources for emergency relief is FEMA, and it is being reported that FEMA has no more money to assist the millions of families affected.
Homeland Security Secretary says FEMA can meet immediate needs, but does not have enough funding to make it through hurricane season.
Something we continue to follow here on 10 Tampa Bay. There's a bipartisan group of senators from affected states who wrote the leadership this week saying it's clear Congress must act, saying it may even require lawmakers to come back in October ahead of the election. Here's what Alejandro Mayorkas said about the funding less than 24 hours ago.
We are meeting the immediate needs with the money that we have. We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have the funds. FEMA does not have the funds to make it through the season.
This all comes as the Biden-Harris administration spent over $1 billion from a FEMA program on services for migrants. Attorney General of the great state of Florida, Ashley Moody, joins me now. AG Moody, why does the Biden-Harris administration always seem to help American taxpayers last?
The government's main concern has always been its relationships with its allies in other countries. This has been the case since 1776, before the original Constitution was changed, revamped, and updated in 1871. The so-called Founding Fathers of America were a small group of 20-year-olds with little to no knowledge of the entire landmass. They were sent to explore parts of it with the intent of establishing small developments in towns where immigrants could reside and call home. The catch is that they will all have to work a job of some kind, no matter if they are legal or an illegal migrant. And let's be honest here, the government and many Democrats and Republicans have always prioritized immigrants over Americans, dating back to when they needed foreigners to assist them with taking over this landmass fraudulently through the ink in their stencils. They created two citizenship statuses, white and black, giving each group the false impression of inclusion. The same divide and conquer method used to set the Indians against each other is still employed today. This represents a form of psychological manipulation and control. Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter, because they consistently prioritize their political careers over everything else, including people's lives. An example of that is Kamala Harris. While visiting one area that had been hit by the hurricane, she spoke about providing some relief to the folks who were in need.
And the federal relief and assistance that we have been providing has included FEMA providing $750 for folks who need immediate needs being met, such as food, baby formula, and the like. And you can apply now for anyone who's watching this who has been affected. There are FEMA personnel who are going door to door to interact personally with folks, especially those who do not have electricity, but also that aid, if you have electricity, can be applied for online, and I encourage people to do that. FEMA will just basically verify your address, and then the process should take hold.
With FEMA mentioning that they have no more money to help assist people in need for the duration of the hurricane season, the Vice President of the United States went on national television to announce a whopping $750 relief fund that will be provided by FEMA to assist families.
has included FEMA providing $750 for folks who need immediate needs being met.
This is a slap in the face that should make people question the government's pledge to put Americans first. Keep in mind that all politicians should be about the people, what they need, and what they would like to see change for the better. But no, the vice president believes that $750 should be enough in an economy where all prices have increased by at least 40 to 50% on average for families that have suffered from a natural disaster. For a family with 2 children, $750 is not enough to cover food and baby formula for the entire 6 to 8 months it would take for Asheville, North Carolina to rebuild, for example. That $750 would be immediately spent on day 1 of receiving it.
Hey guys, for those that don't know, I'm at the foothills of the Western North Carolina mountains, and everybody in my area that I've talked to, including myself, who applied for the $750 assistance payment from FEMA, has been denied. Okay? Yeah. They've denied us. Okay. So here we sit. We've thrown out all of our food because we had no power for 5-6 days. Some still are without power. Here we sit. Limited resources in the store. And they have denied our $750 resource check. So, yeah. How do you like that?
Then what's next? The government should have answers to these questions, especially since it spends millions of taxpayer dollars on special organizations hired to specialize in this area of expertise, like FEMA, for example. Then they have to apply online for the money.
You can apply now for anyone who's watching this who has been affected. There are FEMA personnel who are going door to door to interact personally with folks, especially those who do not have electricity. But
how is this even possible when families have lost their homes, lost their means of transportation, and have no electricity, water, or the internet to apply for this money?
I want to share with y'all some things you may not know about what's happening in the North Carolina mountains in the aftermath of Helene. Here's number one. If you have friends or family that are headed into the mountains or who live there, the looting has picked up major steam. I was advised yesterday by a county sheriff to make sure that anybody out and about is carrying, and in his words, carrying with the safety off. There are very aggressive people out there, and I'm just going to go ahead and say this. It's not because they're necessarily awful. They're desperate. Desperate people do desperate things, y'all. And why are they desperate? Because there's no water in some of these communities. We have neighbors in North Carolina with no water. And all I can say is this: the government ain't coming to save you. Not now, not ever, because they don't care about you, the people, anymore. It is the citizens who are going to have to step it up. Now, I got to tell y'all, I was floored yesterday by how my community, which is a little over an hour away from the affected areas, showed up at donation sites with water and diapers and formula and some liquid IV. I mean, y'all brought all kind of things, bleach, vinegar. You are ready to help, and we're going to take more donations today, and we're so grateful for everything because I'm going to get it into the hands of actual volunteers. And I was asking people, like, why are you bringing it to me? Some of y'all don't even know me. And they said, well, we don't trust the relief organizations anymore. Y'all, we have lost our organizations to grifters. We have lost our organizations to liars. And so we have to rely on each other because that's how this country was built. This country was built patriot by patriot. And I can tell you this, as a realtor, I know my realtors in the mountains, and I have talked to them, and they know the neighbors too. So I am getting your donations into hands that are going to get it into hands. And everybody that sent me dollars, I got teams of shoppers out, and I got receipts to prove it, because we are not grifters. We are neighbors. And the patriots that are in the mountains, if you see this, if your family sees this, hear me now. You are not forgotten by the rest of North Carolina. And if you are not in North Carolina, then there are ways that you can give. But can I just remind y'all of something? You cannot eat money. You cannot drink money. So for those of y'all that thought money was your God, and by the way, that includes our freaking elected officials, it's not your God. Told my girlfriend this morning while we were talking about this during our run, I said, tell your children, 'cause she's got grown children, this is why you keep a stash of water on hand. This is why you keep a stash of food on hand. But for those of y'all that are not in affected areas, if you can take your donated items and send it to the mountains, then send it with a friend. Make sure you're sending truckloads so that we don't overload the roads, because our first responders are overwhelmed. By the way, thank you, Governor DeSantis, for doing more for North Carolina than North Carolina's governor has. I'm very grateful for your National Guard, because we have to help each other, y'all. And I'm gonna tell you something. If you will share this with somebody who doesn't know what's happening in North Carolina, they need to know. They need to know that there are entire towns gone. Chimney Rock is gone, a beautiful town. Swannanoa, gone. Montreat, gone. Other towns damaged beyond repair. That means our geography has changed, our culture is at risk, but most importantly, our people, our generational people have lost their generational homes. This ain't about your granite countertops anymore. Listen, y'all, listen. Tell somebody how they can help. I am but one resource. There are people I know all over North and South Carolina that have been gathering up goods and trucks. Somebody as far away as Massachusetts putting a truck together. Let me know. I can connect you to where to take things. The Baptists are doing a great job out of Boone. Samaritan's Purse is on the ground. I trust those two organizations. I wish I had trust for more, because I don't trust this government, but I trust the people of North Carolina. Y'all, the biggest thing you can do, pray. Pray right now. Pray fervently that people will turn their hearts back to God, and pray for a hedge of protection around all those who have seen things they should never have to see. I'll tell you one more story before I hang up this video. I had a lady come to my donation site yesterday, and her grandson is 10 years old, living in the mountains with his mother, who works in a VA hospital. They're getting the kid out today to get him home because they can finally get him out. And they're worried because he has seen things he should never have to see. When you have children that are seeing bodies on the ground and towns gone, we're going to have to answer for that one day, y'all. Please pray, please do something. And for those of y'all that have already done something, I can't thank you enough.
Let's take the population of Asheville, North Carolina, for example, which is 95,216 as of 2024, according to the World Population Review. If we multiply the population of Asheville by the amount Kamala Harris and FEMA intend to give each applicant, the total aid would amount to about $71.4 million. This is in contrast to the nearly $100 billion with a B in aid that Ukraine received in just a few years or less, and they don't pay any taxes in America. And that $71.4 million will be much less because of how many people lost their lives that have not been accounted for as of today.
It's really galling. I mean, by one estimate that I read in the Federalist today, we have taken over $1 billion in our tax money out of FEMA and used it for services for illegals. $364 million in 23, $650 million in 24, reports the Federalist, to the Shelter and Services Program to, quote, provide humanitarian services to non-citizen immigrants following their release from DHS.
This is a prime example of how the government prioritizes immigrants over Americans, and it has been this way ever since the government's inception. They will pretend to act in the interests of American people and allow them to participate in a voting event that seems to benefit them. However, the government's administrative state has undisclosed plans, and the public will be misled into believing otherwise due to the deployment of the government's psychological manipulation and control.
So the more I'm looking into this whole situation, the worse it's getting. We really need to talk about what's happening in North Carolina specifically. I don't know if this is happening in other areas. I've only heard about North Carolina. My mom lives in North Carolina. She's not too far away from what happened. She lost power for about 4 days, but like everything is fine. Their roads were fine. But there are areas where that's not the case. Right now, in particular, Chimney Rock has been told that their entire town is federal property now. They can't even go back to their homes. There are bodies that are laying in the water. There are bodies that are laying under trees and in the debris, and they can't get to their family members. The federal government has said that that land and all of those bodies are now federal property. The federal government is not wanting to identify any of the bodies. They're just wanting to bulldoze over it and not even count how many people this natural disaster, if you want to call it that, has caused. Furthermore, people who are trapped and who are getting shipments of supplies. There was a pastor that was going door to door handing out water, and the request changed from water to body bags. They need body bags, and the feds aren't picking up the bodies. They're literally leaving them to rot. So just imagine for a second, you have lost everything, literally everything. You have no food, you have no water, and your family member who perished is literally rotting beside you. And there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing that the federal government is doing about it. You can't even get a body bag to put your family member in so that the stench stops spreading. Like, how is this America? How is this America? There are people who have been without food and water for 6 days. The 82nd National Guard has been begging to go in and help these people, and the federal government has told them to stand down. Something evil is going on in the mountains, and we really need to talk about it. We need to put pressure on Washington to get our people the help that they need.
The psychological manipulation also influences education and becomes a societal norm. When people witness unusual events and are taught to believe that there is a natural connection, their minds may categorize that information as natural. For instance, if a hurricane could be sustained inland with the ability to stall in a certain location for a predisposed amount of time, shouldn't that tell you that there are bodies of water inland that can aid in this transaction? Meaning that these storms, by design, are moving from one body of water to the next. As we were taught in school, a hurricane develops over a body of water, and then it strengthens as long as it stays in that body of water. Once it reaches landfall, the severity of the winds and the storm itself begins to diminish. But not with Hurricane Helene. Everything was forecast in a way that seemed abnormal.
Hours will be watching this closely, and exactly where that center of circulation goes will have pretty big impacts on our forecast here. Historically, the eastern side of the center of circulation is the most active.
The water's temperature was abnormal.
Further rapid intensification is expected as it makes its way towards that Category 3 major hurricane status, and it's fueled by the abnormally warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico.
The direction that Helene traveled as it made landfall was abnormal. The fact that we were told that the Earth now has 2 moons for a short period of time, right around this significant event of having a hurricane, was abnormal, but everything that was abnormal was made to seem natural. It was to place people's minds in the area that this tragic flooding and loss of life is just a natural occurrence, almost as if it's something biblical.
Take a look, a sneak peek from the new 1916 flood documentary.
Devastating storms caused death and destruction across western North Carolina.
Well, tonight the filmmaker and local experts talk about that epic weather event at a sold-out event at Blue Ridge Community College.
News 13's John Lee tells us why the filmmaker says that time in history is still relevant today.
It almost looked like Asheville had become Venice.
1916 may seem like ancient history.
It's amazing, people are always dressed up even in the middle of a flood.
Woodrow Wilson was president then.
The French Broad River was actually almost a mile wide. So people are just standing out there and looking at their new neighborhood.
But the whisper of history speaks to filmmaker David Weintraub.
The city of Hendersonville itself was an island surrounded by water. It looks like there's a dam back there, doesn't it?
People have been put into a psychological manipulation, which produces an intellectual deficit, and it's by design. An example of this occurred when news agencies reported of catastrophic dam failures in both Tennessee and North Carolina. Did you know that there are 86 dams in Buncombe County alone? So is there a possibility that this flooding event was purely natural? Yes. But is it also possible that this flooding could have been an unnatural event? Yes, it is.
For the company that had the original lake here, and when the dam burst in 1916, he was sent out on the lake after it burst to bring some boats in that were out there. So they had to close it. That was in 1916 when the big flood was around Asheville and here and everywhere.
And if it was unnatural due to the actions of particular individuals who are manipulating those things in nature,
my experience over time has been that optimistic people accomplish so much more than people who are not optimistic. People follow optimists. They like to do business with optimistic people, and it makes for great salesmanship.
well, then who should be held responsible?
I'm just here to make you think. I hope you all enjoyed that episode of Dane Calloway Unfiltered and learned something new. Make sure that you like this video and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so. Check out our site, DaneMakeYouThink.com, if you want more informative, enlightening content. You can follow me on Instagram, Discord, X, and TikTok. I'll see you. Wado.